Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I wanted to take a first impressions look at Ubuntu 18.04 and hopefully to give you guys an idea of if this is a operating system that you want to go ahead and install on your computer. So if you didn't already know, Ubuntu is a Debian based operating system. It tends to be pretty stable, and they've definitely done a lot to make it a very user-friendly operating system, making it one of the more popular Linux distributions out there, right up there with things like Linux Mint and Manjaro. For the most part in Ubuntu 18.04 you have the same layout they've had for a couple versions now. Opening up the File Explorer though, I notice it's kind of got a dark color theme over here. It really meshes pretty well with the icons over on the left, and the ability for you to do things like switch between icons display mode and a list display, as well as adding on many different things to categorize by, I think makes this a really good file explorer. You also notice it has all of the shortcuts you really want, like documents, downloads, music, pictures, and videos, all as separate folders, all hotkeyed over here by default. You can of course add other locations on your computer as well. Now in Linux you can of course tell programs to start when you start the computer. In the past I guess you would have done this a lot with a file called .bashrc, which is located on your user profile. But in Ubuntu, there's actually an easier graphical user interface way of doing this called Startup Application Preferences. You can launch this in other programs by clicking on the application launcher down there. So it's right here, Startup Application Preferences. And with this, you can tell other programs to start by default. And by hitting add, you can tell other programs to start by default. So in a lot of cases, you can do things by just running simple commands like Skype as if you were launching it from the terminal and name it Skype. You can also add in any options that you might include when you're running it in a terminal. So a lot of programs would have -V for verbose or debug mode. But you can also just get those programs started by browsing for their location on the computer. So for instance, if I come to the bin directory, you can run many of the typical Linux commands. So I could do an echo command. You'll notice it put the full path to that command, and often putting the full path isn't completely necessary if that location is already in the path. But just for fun here, I could put a message in like hello world, and then this command would run at the start of the computer. So we could just put echo here and hit add. Now, the thing about running the echo command is that outputs to the console, so that wouldn't actually do anything as a startup program, but the idea is the same. If you're running Skype, then you would just do Skype as your default command with whatever options you need, and then as long as you have this checked in here, it's going to run that command and open up the program when you start your computer. Another cool tool I noticed that Ubuntu has out of the box now is called Remina Remote Desktop Client. Now what you use a remote desktop client for is letting other people connect to your computer or connecting into other computer where you can basically screen share. So if you connect to someone's computer, you can see their screen, and if they give you permission, they can also allow you to manipulate their machine. Windows has something like this out of the box, but having it available on Linux too is pretty cool. And here's the software package manager for Ubuntu. Now, one of the things that I think sets this apart from a lot of other ones out there is that there's actually a rating system here. So you can see what the best apps are pretty easily. So for instance, if you're interested in some games, you can go in there and see, hey, people really like emulators like the Dolphin emulator for, I think, the Nintendo Wii, and DOSBox emulator for the classic Microsoft DOS games, which there were some pretty fun games back then. You can of course search by name as well, and you can manually search the entire package manager, but this is a pretty cool way to see what apps are probably going to be the most useful for you, just checking out some of the 5-star ones. But if you just want to search by name, you can go up here at the top, so you could do something like Chrome, and if a package for that exists inside of the Ubuntu repositories, you'll see it up here. So Chromium Web Browser, it's the open source version of Chrome. FYI, if you do want the regular version of Chrome, you can get that, but you have to go online to the Google servers for that. And I believe that's just because Google is the only ones legally allowed to distribute Chrome. So if you like Mozilla, then Mozilla Firefox and Thunderbird are the default browser and emailing clients inside of Ubuntu. A lot of different distributions these days do use Mozilla things out of the box. I agree with that. I'm kind of a Mozilla guy myself. But of course, any browser you want to add on, or any apps that are Linux compatible that you want to add on. You'll just need to do a little extra work to get that going. Now, one thing I guess I have a very minor gripe about is that when you install Ubuntu, there's kind of a few games that you may or may not want. You could call it bloatware if you want. So like Solitaire, Mahjong, Mines. I mean, these can all be pretty okay games, but if you didn't want them on their computer, then you'll have to do a little tiny bit of work to go ahead and remove that. Sudoku as well is also in there. So all in all, Ubuntu is still a very user-friendly operating system. If you're pretty new to Linux, there's going to be tools out of the box and tools in the Ubuntu repository that can help you out pretty easily. So for instance, they have a bootloader fixer that was created specifically for Ubuntu that you can use if you run into issues with grub. That's a pretty useful tool to have. So one more thing they did add to Ubuntu is the ability to have certain updates install without you needing to reboot your computer, where previously you would have had to do that. When you first launch into Ubuntu 18.04, they'll give you a welcome screen where it will talk to you about that, and all you really need to do is sign into the Ubuntu One account, which you can register for on their official websites. Now, a lot of people may not actually like the idea of having an Ubuntu account, particularly if you don't like having any of your data on other websites or servers. But if you like the idea of not having to reboot your computer when you install certain updates, that can be a useful thing to set up when you first launch Ubuntu 18.04. So if you want maximum compatibility and you like this kind of GNOME style interface out of the box, you can of course grab other desktop environments still. Then Ubuntu is going to be a pretty decent choice to go with. The only downside is that they do add a few extra things that you may not want. You might not want this Amazon app, which can open up and let you shop in the store. You may not want some of these games. But aside from that, that's most of what I see to be new inside of Ubuntu 18.04. Still a very solid operating system, still very user-friendly, and should be stable for most people. So I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my future video content.